the United Kingdom
I
might
would
be in a
love
better
to see
spot.
Canada be the 51st state. The Canadian citizens, if that happened, would get a very big tax cut, tremendous tax cut, because they're very highly taxed. And you wouldn't have to worry about military. You wouldn't have to worry about many of the things. You'd have better health coverage. You'd have much better health coverage. So I think the people of Canada would like it.
Good evening. We begin tonight with a developing international story that has left global leaders stunned. In a speech delivered in Ohio just hours ago, the U.S. president made what many are calling his most controversial remarks yet. The statement has been met with swift condemnation from Canadian officials. The Prime Minister issued a direct response moments ago, calling the remarks dangerous and absurd. He went on to state that Canada's sovereignty is not up for debate. International response has been swift. NATO leaders have demanded immediate clarification from Washington, with some officials privately describing the president's words as reckless. The U.S. State Department has downplayed the remarks, calling them off-the-cuff comments taken out of context. However, a White House insider has leaked reports suggesting that the president has privately discussed using economic pressure on Canada to encourage compliance. Adding to concerns, there has been an uptick in U.S. military activity near the northern border. Canadian officials confirm that fighter jets have been spotted flying unusually close to Canadian airspace. NORAD has denied any offensive operations, stating these are routine exercises. However, military analysts warn that the timing is highly unusual.
This is your sign. To be the 450. Because this winter, Canadian Blood Services needs 450 new donors a day to keep Canada's lifeline strong. Join the 450 Challenge and get Canada's blood pumping.
At approximately 11:20 p.m. Eastern Time, the Canada Border Services Agency, CBSA, reported unauthorized entry of military vehicles at multiple points along the Ontario-Michigan border. It is currently unknown if this is an accidental breach or a coordinated movement. Authorities do not have clear communication with U.S. counterparts at this time, and efforts to determine the situation are ongoing. The Premier of Ontario has ordered the immediate mobilization of provincial emergency resources and has formally requested the federal government to declare a state of emergency. At this time, law enforcement and military personnel are assessing the situation. No official statement has been provided by the U.S. government regarding this activity. This is not a test.
Good evening. We interrupt this program with an urgent national update. Reports are now being confirmed by sources within the White House. The United States has initiated unauthorized military incursions into Canadian airspace and territory. We can now confirm that American military convoys have crossed into Ontario and British Columbia, seizing key infrastructure points. Fighter jets have been tracked entering Canadian airspace without clearance. Communications are disrupted in several regions, and officials are scrambling for answers. This shocking escalation follows weeks of rising tensions, sparked by inflammatory rhetoric from the U.S. president, who recently suggested Canada should become the 51st state. While the White House has yet to confirm these actions, sources within the Pentagon indicate that strategic operation is now underway. The Canadian government has declared a national state of emergency, and all military forces have been placed on high alert. The Prime Minister is expected to address the nation shortly. We urge all Canadians to remain calm and stay tuned for further updates.
Reports confirm that hostile U.S. military forces have crossed the border and are advancing deep into Canadian territory. Canadian Armed Forces units are currently engaged in direct combat along multiple highways leading toward Calgary. The public is ordered to shelter in place immediately. Stay away from windows and doors. Do not attempt to leave the city. Intense clashes reported in Highway 2 between Lethbridge and Calgary. Armed engagements ongoing in Highway 3 toward Medicine Hat and Crow's Nest Pass border crossings are now under U.S. control. U.S. Air Force has been detected operating in Alberta's airspace. Officials warn that Calgary and Edmonton could be seized within hours. Airstrikes have already struck border locations near Surrey, C, and military sites near Ottawa. Aerial bombardment in Alberta is now a real possibility. If you hear sirens or emergency alerts, seek immediate shelter in the lowest part of your home. Do not attempt to intervene or approach military activity. The Canadian Armed Forces are actively defending the province. Repeat, this is not a test. Alberta is under direct military incursion. Shelter immediately.
This is not how we consolidate power. We were supposed to bleed them out economically, not send the goddamn 82nd Airborne into Toronto overnight. Do you realize the firestorm we've ignited?
Firestorms don't last when you control the oxygen, Chief. We own the global narrative. The press will say what we want them to say. We'll frame this as a stabilization effort. Hell, even a humanitarian mission if we have to.
You're out of your mind if you think the world is going to buy that. Europe is screaming at us, the UN is calling an emergency session, and the British have literally sailed their fleet into the Atlantic. What the hell do you think they're going to do?
Nothing. They'll do nothing. We control the oil. We control the grain. Europe doesn't eat without us. If they push too hard, we tighten the noose. We'll starve them into silence.
You think that's going to stop this from ripping our country apart? The governors are refusing to deploy the National Guard. Hell, California just flat out denied a federal order. You've got blue states openly resisting. This isn't just Canada anymore. This is tearing the United States in half.
They can resist all they want. At the end of the day, the Pentagon follows orders. If push comes to shove, we invoke the Insurrection Act. We lock this country down. No protests, no media outbursts. We'll make sure the streets are quiet.
You're talking about martial law. Are you even hearing yourself?
I'm talking about control, and last I checked, history is written by those who seize it.
This will not end the way you think it will. You're forcing the world to choose sides. You're betting on Moscow and Beijing sitting still, but if they sense we're overextended, if they see us bleeding out in Canada, they'll make their move. Taiwan. Eastern Europe. Hell, even the Middle East could explode over this. Do you even understand what you've started?
We didn't start this, we're finishing it. Canada was never supposed to be independent. They're ours, always have been. We let them have their fun for a century, but now the game is over.
This is how empires fall.
No, Chief, this is how empires rise. Then let history be written by the victors.
This is CNN Breaking News.
We are interrupting our scheduled programming with breaking news. The Pentagon has privately confirmed to reporters that strategic operations are underway in North America. However, they have provided no further clarification on the nature of these operations. There is no mention of war, no formal declaration, and no official statement from the White House. According to multiple sources, a late-night federal memo has been sent to state governors ordering the immediate federalization of the National Guard. However, resistance is already growing. The governor of California has publicly stated that he has denied any such order and will not comply. Other Democratic governors have also voiced opposition, and several National Guard units across multiple states are refusing to deploy. The situation is escalating rapidly. Meanwhile, reports from Canada remain extremely limited. Most communication lines with Canada have been disrupted, and there are only sporadic updates from our Canadian counterpart. What we do know is that something unprecedented is happening.
This is a national emergency message. All broadcast stations and cable systems shall transmit this national emergency message. This station has interrupted its regular programming at the request of the White House to participate in the emergency alert system. During this emergency, most stations will remain on the air providing news and information to the public in assigned areas. This is CNN. We will continue to serve the New York State area. If you are not in this local area, you should tune to stations providing news and information for your local area. You are listening to the emergency alert system serving the New York State area. This is an official message from the United States government. A classified strategic operation is now underway across North America. The U.S. Armed Forces are currently engaged in a high-priority national security mission. Due to heightened security measures, all civilians must avoid border regions and major highways leading into Canada. Effective immediately, the following routes are closed to all non-military traffic. Interstate 87, I-87. Full closure beyond Albany. Do not attempt to travel north. Interstate 81, I-81. Restricted access near Watertown. Avoid all border crossings. U.S. Route 11. U.S. 11. Civilian travel is now prohibited beyond Potsdam. New York State Route 37, NY at 37. All routes near the St. Lawrence River are on lockdown. Do not attempt to cross into Canada. Any unauthorized movement will be met with immediate intervention. Government authorities advise all residents to remain at home, avoid speculation, and refrain from spreading unverified information. Reports of disruptions and foreign involvement are unconfirmed at this time. All media and communication restrictions are temporary and necessary for national security. Stay inside, stay alert, await further instructions.
We have breaking news coming in from across the province and the nation right now. We are struggling to get full confirmation of events, but what we do know is that Winnipeg is in chaos. Protesters and armed civilians have taken to the streets, clashing directly with advancing U.S. troops. I repeat, American forces are inside the city. The RCMP and Canadian Armed Forces are being pushed back. Reports from multiple sources indicate that U.S. forces have secured Emerson, Gretna, and Boisvane border towns just south of Winnipeg. The highways are not safe. If you are listening to this, do not travel toward the border. In a shocking development, we are now receiving unconfirmed reports that power has gone out in Ottawa, Montreal, and Quebec City. Communications with these cities are intermittent at best, non-existent at worst. NATO leadership has officially demanded answers from Washington. I repeat, NATO has formally asked the US to explain what is happening. The UK and EU have issued an immediate ceasefire demand, and this is just coming in. Unconfirmed but highly credible reports indicate that the Prime Minister and several members of the Canadian government have been taken aboard a UK warship. Again, we cannot confirm this, but if true, it would suggest that the federal government has abandoned Ottawa.
This is an emergency alert issued by the Government of Canada. This is not a test. The Government of Canada is confirming reports of U.S. airborne paratroopers landing in Western Canada, sabotage operations, and widespread airstrikes targeting key infrastructure across British Columbia. Communications networks are rapidly deteriorating, and multiple news agencies have been forcibly taken off the air. We are officially under full-scale invasion by the United States. Eastern and Central Canada have fallen, with Winnipeg being the latest city to succumb to U.S. control. The situation is critical. Do not attempt to evacuate. There is now there safe to go. Shelter in place immediately. Lock your doors. Stay away from windows. Do not engage with hostile forces. Canadian cities west of Manitoba are expected to fall within hours. Military resistance is ongoing, but the situation is dire. However, this fight is far from over. The Prime Minister has assembled an international coalition with France, the United Kingdom, Germany, Japan, Australia, and the European Union. British and French naval forces are repositioning in the Atlantic Ocean. We are not alone. We will not surrender. We will resist. We are...
Ladies and gentlemen, we are witnessing an unprecedented unraveling of the United States government. In the wake of the controversial invasion of Canada, the highest ranks of the administration are collapsing. Multiple senior officials, people once considered the backbone of this presidency, have resigned in protest. Sources inside the Pentagon confirmed that a faction of military leaders attempted to seize control of operations just hours ago, a military coup in Washington, D.C. Let that sink in. What we can confirm at this hour is that the president has been moved to a secure location. Whether this is a precautionary measure or something more serious remains unclear. Meanwhile, mass protests across major cities are escalating, police forces are overwhelmed, and in some areas, the National Guard is reportedly refusing deployment orders. Again, we are working to verify these details as they come in, but what we are seeing tonight is a nation in turmoil.
Please stand by for a recorded message from a representative of the President of the United States. My fellow Americans, the United States is facing an unprecedented national security crisis, one that demands swift and decisive action. For years, we have watched as foreign threats have amassed at our borders and within our own backyard. We have seen a reckless Canadian government harbor dangerous elements, engaging in economic warfare against us, while failing to secure their own territory from the infiltration of hostile actors. At the same time, our southern border has been overrun, with Mexico turning a blind eye, or worse, aiding and abetting an invasion of illegal immigrants, drug cartels, and foreign operatives seeking to destabilize our nation. The intelligence community has provided irrefutable evidence that both our northern and southern borders have been exploited by adversaries seeking to undermine American sovereignty. We have received intelligence indicating a potential coordinated attack on U.S. soil, planned by actors operating through Canada and Mexico. We will not wait for another tragedy to occur before taking action. This is why we have launched a strategic national security operation to neutralize these threats before they reach the heart of America. This is not about conquest, it is about self-preservation. We are not harming the people of Canada or Mexico, but we will not tolerate their government's enabling threats against the United States. To those who plan to riot, to resist, to take to the streets in chaos, let me make this clear: we will shut it down. Any attempt to undermine this operation will be dealt with swiftly and decisively. A shelter-in-place order will be enforced in regions affected by this security mission. Do not be misled by the fake news media. We are protecting America. To our allies, we remain a beacon of stability in an unstable world. To the American people trusting your government, we will not fail you. And to those who dare to threaten our homeland, you will be stopped. May God bless the United States of America.
Estamos esperando que la presidenta de México, Sheinbaum, se dirija a la nación en esta conferencia de prensa de emergencia que ordenó.
Este es un boletín de emergencia emitido por el Gobierno de México y la Protección Civil. Atención a todos los residentes de Tijuana, Tecate, Mexicali y otras ciudades fronterizas. Se reporta una incursión militar no identificada cruzando la frontera desde los Estados Unidos. Fuerzas Armadas estadounidenses han avanzado rápidamente y están tomando posiciones en varias zonas. Los informes son confusos y contradictorios, pero testigos en la frontera indican movimientos masivos de tropas, convoyes blindados y sobrevuelos de aviones de combate. La comunicación con muchas áreas ha sido interrumpida y la situación está fuera de control. Si se encuentra en Tijuana o sus alrededores, evacúe de inmediato si es posible. Evite todo contacto con fuerzas militares estadounidenses. Refugíese en lugares seguros y evite carreteras principales.
Good evening. We have received a breaking statement from His Majesty's government following the United States' full-scale military operations in Canada and Mexico. The UK has issued a direct response as international tensions reach a breaking point. We now bring you the full statement, just released moments ago. The United Kingdom strongly condemns the unlawful and unprovoked invasion of Canada and Mexico by the United States. Despite repeated diplomatic efforts, Washington has refused all communication with the international community. The UK stands by its Commonwealth partner Canada and will take all necessary measures to uphold international law. We will not be intimidated. We will not stand down. We will fight for Canada. This message comes as NATO faces its biggest crisis since its formation. With the United States now openly attacking its allies, multiple nations have announced they are formally withdrawing from NATO and instead forming an independent international coalition. The coalition, spearheaded by the UK, France, Germany, Australia and Japan, aims to counteract US military aggression. European nations, including France, Germany and the Netherlands, have declared that NATO can no longer function as it was originally intended, as the alliance was built under US leadership. Now, with Washington acting as a rogue state, several member nations are renouncing NATO obligations and shifting their military coordination to the new international coalition. Japan and South Korea have expelled all US military personnel from their territories. In response, Washington has reportedly threatened military action against both nations. While no formal attack has taken place, the White House has labeled their expulsions as acts of hostility. Japan's Prime Minister called the US response unacceptable and vowed that Japan will defend itself against any threats, no matter where they come from. The United Nations General Assembly has convened an emergency session where global leaders are calling for immediate intervention against the United States. However, the reality remains that the United States, with its overwhelming military power, may outmatch the coalition forces assembled against it. The UK government, however, has declared that this will not deter them. Notably, both Russia and China have not taken direct military action. Beijing has condemned the invasion but has so far remained passive. The Kremlin, while strongly critical of Washington's aggression, has taken no steps to mobilize forces. Analysts believe both nations are watching to see how the situation unfolds, choosing to let the Western world collapse from within. At this hour, global uncertainty has reached its highest point in modern history. The United States, once the leader of the free world, now finds itself increasingly isolated, facing military and economic retaliation from its former allies.
The walls are closing in, the power grid is compromised, financial markets are hemorrhaging, and our cyber defense is a damn joke against what China and Russia just pulled. We've lost strategic comms in the Pacific. Missile defense grids are malfunctioning, and the media is screaming for the president. Meanwhile, we know exactly where he is.
Locked in the bunker like a caged animal. Pathetic. The great savior of America reduced to a prisoner in his own house. The public won't hear a damn thing from him. Only what we decide they hear.
Forget him, we have bigger problems. The Europeans didn't just cut and run from NATO. They're in. Troop landings confirmed in eastern Canada. Intelligence suggests they're securing ports in Halifax and St. John's. They think they can establish a foothold on our doorstep and dictate terms.
Do we attack?
Of course we attack. We don't tolerate foreign boots on our soil. Canada is ours, whether the world likes it or not.
And what about China's economic chokehold? No more supply chains, no more imports. Our industries are already seizing up. The shelves will go empty within weeks. The people will riot.
Let them riot. Fear is a powerful tool. The weak will break, but the strong will fall in line. We've already given the National Guard expanded directives. Rubber bullets today. Live rounds tomorrow if needed.
Let's not dance around this. We have the most powerful arsenal ever assembled in human history. It's time to use it.
Are you suggesting we bring out the invisible hand?
I'm saying we break them from within. Color revolutions, assassinations, economic sabotage. We hit Beijing's political structure like a wrecking ball. We turn Moscow's oligarchs against their own leader. If the world wants chaos, then we make them drown in it.
And if they don't budge?
Then we show them why the U.S. has always been feared. We make them remember what true power looks like. Strategic strikes. Untraceable, undeniable. A whisper that becomes an inferno. And if they still press us, we have firepower to end nations.
You're talking about the nuclear option.
I'm talking about winning. This country doesn't lose. We reshape the world or we burn it down with us. If Russia and China want to see how far we'll go, let's take them to the edge.
We take Canada fully. We crush resistance before it begins. We unleash hell on Europe's forces in the east. And we remind the world that America bows to no one.
This is a mandatory emergency directive from the United States Armed Forces. By order of the United States military government, all civil authority in Canada is hereby dissolved. The Government of Canada no longer exists. At 600 hours Eastern Standard Time, coordinated U.S. military operations have resulted in the full control of all major Canadian population centers and strategic infrastructure. All remaining resistance has been neutralized. Your government has abandoned you. Senior officials, including the Prime Minister, have fled and are now under the protection of foreign governments. The United States will establish a provisional military administration to maintain order and continuity of essential services. All public gatherings, protests, and resistance efforts are unlawful and will be dealt with immediately. Curfews are now in place from 1,800 to 600 hours. Non-compliance will be met with immediate detainment. All civilian movement is restricted. Unauthorized travel will be intercepted and stopped. Foreign military intervention will not be tolerated. Any attempt to breach U.S. secure territory will be met with decisive military action. At 200 hours Eastern Standard Time, elements within the U.S. government attempted to undermine ongoing operations. As a result, former civilian leadership, including the President, has been removed. The United States is now under a unified military command. All federal institutions have been suspended. There will be no further political negotiations. This is no longer a diplomatic matter. This is military governance. Do not attempt to resist. Resistance will be met with immediate military response. Shelter in place and comply with all instructions given by U.S. military personnel. Any broadcast or publication attempting to spread disinformation or encourage dissent will be terminated. This is not temporary. This is the new reality. There will be no further warnings.